Welcome everybody. This is Math 103, Section 1.4 on exponents and the order of operations agreement. So recall that exponents represent repeated multiplication, and they consist of a base and an exponent. The base is the number that we multiply over and over again, and the exponent represents how many times that number appears in the multiplication. For example, 3 to the 4th power. 3 is the number we're multiplying over and over again, and it appears 4 times. And now we're going to do the reverse in your turn number 1. Now keep in mind, I'm not going to pause the video to allow you time to work on the your turn. So you should pause the video here and do the your turn, and then resume the video when you're done. Your turn number 1, we've got x's being multiplied repeatedly, so that's the base. And x appears 3 times, so the exponent is 3. X to the 3rd power. And we can also apply exponents to fractions. So 4/5 to the 3rd power, this represents repeated multiplication of the fraction 4/5. The entire fraction 4/5 is the base. So this is 4/5 times 4/5 times 4/5. And since with fractions, we multiply straight across, up on top we have 4 to the 3rd power, and on the bottom we have 5 to the 3rd power. And evaluating that gives us 64 over 125. And this fraction cannot be simplified, so that'd be the final answer. Your turn number 2. We have 3/7 squared. You can turn that into 3 squared on top and 7 squared on the bottom. And evaluating, we have 9 over 49. Now with exponents, be very careful when you encounter negatives. So if we take a negative and raise it to an even power, such as in the next example, we got -3 to the 4th power. The base is -3. You have to include the negative when we do the repeated multiplication. Now in this case, we've got pairs of negatives here that are going to cancel each other out. Negative times negative is a positive. So that turns positive, and that turns positive. So we get positive 81 for that. But if we take -3 to the 5th power, then these negatives are going to cancel here. These negatives are going to cancel, and we're left with one negative remaining. So that's going to stay in our answer. That one doesn't get to cancel with anything. So we get -243. Now let's compare that with this situation, where we've got one number in parentheses and one number outside of the parentheses. All right, no parentheses here, parentheses here. Two very different situations because the base is different in those two expressions. So this is where paying very close attention to the symbols is critical. The base is only the thing right next to the exponent. So that negative has nothing to do with the exponent here. So this expression can be written as negative times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. So we multiply these out, 2, 4, 8, 16, but it's still negative. So we get negative 16 here. But with this expression, the base is negative 2. So this represents negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. Now, just like we saw over here, the negatives all cancel because we have an even number of negatives. And that one is positive 16. Your turn, number 3. So just like we saw with the example, here we've got a base with a negative. All those negatives are going to cancel, and we get positive 1296. But with here, the base is just 6, and we're multiplying by negative 1. So negative 1 times 4 sixes multiplied is negative 1296. So let's say your friend gives you directions to a restaurant. Turn left, then left again, then right, and you're there. Instead, you turn right, then left again, and you're lost. Order matters, and it's critical in math. So that's why we have the order of operations agreement. With any expression, using the order of operations agreement, we're all going to evaluate the expression the exact same way in the same order. So let's compare 2 different ways of evaluating the same expression. We got 20 divided by 5 times 2. So what I'd like you to do is here divide first. And here multiply first and see what you get. So if we divide first, 20 divided by 5 is 4. So we get 4 times 2. 4 times 2 is 8. If we multiply first, we get 20 divided by 5 times 2 is 10. 20 divided by 10 is 2. So just like we end up at a different place if we follow the directions in a different order, here we end up at a different answer if we do the operations in a different order. So that brings us to the order of operations agreement. So have a look at that. We're starting with grouping symbols. So that's in kind of parentheses, brackets, absolute value, division bar. And then we do the order of operations inside any grouping symbols, starting with exponentials, multiplication, division, working left to right, addition, subtraction, working left to right. So let's practice. Start off with an example. 4 times 6 minus 18 divided by 3. So we don't have any exponents, don't have any grouping symbols, so we're going to start with multiplication, division. We'll work left to right. Here we'll start with 4 times 6, get 24. All right, now we've got a division here, so we're not going to do the subtraction first. We don't work left to right when we're working within different steps of the order of operations agreement. All right. Subtraction, that has to wait till the end. So we're going to do this one first. So 18 divided by 3 is 6. So we get 24 minus 6, and then we do the subtraction and get 18. Your turn, number 4. So we got no grouping symbols, no exponents. We'll start with the division on the left. 24 divided by 3 is 8. Now we'll do the multiplication. Then add them together, and we get 20. Next example. Twelve divided by 6 times 2 plus 7. Again, no grouping symbols, no exponents. Start on the left with this division. 12 divided by 6 is 2. From left to right. Now we'll do the multiplication, so that's 4 plus 7. And then finally the addition to get 11. Your turn, number 5. All right, starting from the left, we got division here. 22 divided by 2 is 11. So that gives us 11 times 3 plus 4. Now do the multiplication. 11 times 3 is 33. Plus 4. And then finally the addition, you get 37. Now with this expression, we see our first grouping symbol, and that's the absolute value bars. So we're going to have to evaluate inside here first. So when I'm doing that, what I'm doing is writing everything else down exactly as it's written in the first step. That keeps everything organized. What I see some students do is just do this, write it over here, then they try to fill it in on the next step. That's a bad form. You should write everything down on every step. So here we got 2 minus 4, which is -2. So we got the absolute value of -2. Now we're going to evaluate this, and anytime you have a number right outside of a grouping symbol, this is multiplication. So once we evaluate the absolute value of -2 to be 2, we're going to end up with 3 times 2 here. So that's 16 divided by 4 plus 3 times 2. All right, now that we've gotten rid of the grouping symbol, now we've got some expressions that look like the ones we've done before. So we'll do it just like we did with those. So 16 divided by 4 is 4. And then 3 times 2 is 6. So we got 4 plus 6, and then 10. Your turn, number 6. So we've got grouping symbols here, so I'm going to start within here. 18 plus -30 is -12. Now we'll continue within the grouping symbol, evaluate this to be +12. Now we've got division. Multiplication over here, start on the left and get 6 here, 6 minus 6 times -1. Now we do this multiplication. Now we have to be very careful here. So I'm going to bring down these two things that we're not working on, 6 minus. And then over here, when we take 6 times -1, we get -6. So that should go inside parentheses. The mistake I see here is just 6 minus 6 and getting 0. So make sure you understand that that negative and that negative are separate. They should not be combined until the next step. Now we're going to combine them because subtracting the negatives like adding. So that's 6 plus 6. And final answer is 12. Next example, we've got our first exponent. So we've got 5 times -2 squared. So we'll start with the exponent. We're squaring -2. -2 is the base, so that's -2 times -2, so that's going to turn into a positive 4. So 5 times 4, or 20. Your turn number 7. So again, we'll start with the exponent. This time we have -2 to the third power. So that's a negative times a negative times a negative. We have 3 negatives. Since it's an odd number of negatives, the result will be negative. So here we get -3 times -8. Now negative times negative is a positive. So those negatives cancel and we get positive 24 for the answer for that one. Next up, now we're going to mix in some grouping symbols and exponents. So start within the grouping symbols. Now within this grouping symbol, I'm going to apply the order of operations agreement. Right? We've got subtraction and division. We're going to start with the division. Everything else comes down unchanged. 18 divided by 2 is 9, so we get 12 minus 9 inside the parentheses there. And over here, 8 minus 10 is -2. -2 to the third power. All right, now complete inside this grouping symbol. So divide 9 divided by 3. Everything else stays the same. Grouping symbols are done. Now we can move on to the exponent. -2 to the third power is -8. Now we're down to division, subtraction, multiplication. So we're going to do the division first. Now the multiplication. 3 times -8 is -24. That should go inside parentheses. Now we are subtracting a negative, so that's adding. So 3 plus 24, or 27. Your turn number 8. So we're going to work inside these grouping symbols first. Here I've got subtraction and an exponent, so we'll do the exponent first. (20 minus 21), that's -1. So -1 to the third power on the end. I'm going to complete this within this grouping symbol first. So that's 5 there. All right, now we'll do the exponent. -1 to the third power is -1. Now we've got division, addition, multiplication. So we'll do the division on the left. 3 plus 3 times -1. Do this multiplication, we get 3 plus negative 3. Those are additive inverses. Add them together and we get 0. The next expressions we're going to look at involve nested parentheses, and that is parentheses within parentheses. So when we have parentheses within parentheses, we're going to start with the inside parentheses. We're going to simplify as much as possible here before we do things like distribution. So 3 plus 1 is 4, and that takes care of the inner parentheses. Now we're going to work inside this grouping symbol. So we've got subtraction and multiplication, so we'll do the multiplication first. Now we can complete inside these parentheses. So that's 2 times 18. And finally, 2 times 18 is 36. Your turn, number 9. So I'm just going to copy everything down exactly as it appears, except for what I'm going to actually operate on, which is inside the inner parentheses. 4 plus 8 gives us 12 there. Now inside this grouping symbol, now we have multiplication, so that is 36 minus 24. So that gives us 9 times 12. We do 36 minus 24, and 9 times 12 is 108. The next type of expressions involve fraction bars. The fraction bar is a grouping symbol, so that means we can work on the top and the bottom independently. And the goal with an expression like this is to simplify the numerator down to a single number and then simplify the denominator down to a single number. Once we have single numbers on top and the bottom, then we can divide. So on top, we're going to start within the grouping symbol, so that is 5 times 6 minus 6. Over, here we'll start with multiplication. 2 times negative 8 is negative 16. Negative 16 plus 10 on the bottom. All right, next up, on top, we have multiplication, so we'll start here. Do 30 minus 6 over negative 16 plus 10 is negative 6. Now we'll finish off the top to get 24. So we got 24 over negative 6. And now we're down to a single number on top, single number on the bottom. Now we can divide. So 24 divided by negative 6 is negative 4. Your turn, number 10. On top, we'll start within the parentheses. So you get 2 times 15 plus 2. And the bottom will start here, multiplication, so that is 15 plus 1. Now on top we have a multiplication here, so we'll do that next. Then it's 30 plus 2, and on the bottom we get 16. Completing the top, that is 32 over 16. And now we're down to a single number on top, a single number on the bottom. We can divide to get 2. All right, so now there's a practice section. It's called Your Turn Number 11, and there's a bunch of mixed problem types. So I'd like you to go through and do all those, and I will demonstrate all those right now. All right, part A. Got a multiplication here. We'll start here. Negative 2 minus. Make sure you bring down that negative sign. Negative 3 times 4 is negative 12. Now we're subtracting negative. This turns into addition, so negative 2 plus 12, 10 for the first one. Here we're going to start with our grouping symbol. Get negative 4 there. Now we're going to do multiplication. That's 14 plus 3 times negative 4 is negative 12, so make sure you put that in parentheses. Adding those two together gives us 2. Part C. Now we've got a grouping symbol in the absolute value bars. So we'll evaluate this first. 16 minus 2 minus 6 is negative 4. Now this is different than the parentheses, so we're not converting, subtracting a negative into a positive, because we need to evaluate this thing first. The absolute value is going to turn this positive. So that just gives us 16 minus positive 4, and 12 for that one. Part D. All right, we've got addition here, division in the middle, and addition over here. So we need to start with this division in the middle, 24 divided by 6. Everything else is going to stay the same, so bring down the negative 5, plus, bring down the plus, 24 divided by 6 is 4, plus 2. All right, negative 5 plus 4 plus 2, add those together and get 1. Part E. Four minus 2 times the absolute value of 3 minus 6. Start within the absolute value bars and evaluate this first. 4 minus 2 times the absolute value of negative 3. Absolute value of negative 3 is positive 3, so this turns into 4 minus 2 times positive 3. Now we'll do the multiplication, 4 minus 6, and negative 2 for part E. F. All right, we got a tricky one here. Lots of parentheses. So we're going to work on the inside first. Keep in mind this exponent is on the outside of this pair of parentheses. So before we do the exponent, we need to figure out what this part equals first. -3 minus -2. So let's simplify here first. Everything else comes down exactly as written. So don't change anything here. Now subtracting a negative is adding, so that's -3 plus 2 to the second power. So it's a nice simplification there to get rid of those parentheses. Makes it a lot less confusing to work with that. All right, now we'll do this inside those parentheses again. So copy everything down exactly. -3 plus 2 is -1. So here we got -1 to the second power. All right, now inside this parentheses here, inside this grouping symbol, we're going to do the order of operations agreement. So we got subtraction, we have an exponent. So we're going to do this exponent next. So -1 squared is +1, so that gives us 4 minus +1 inside this grouping symbol. Now we're going to finish off inside there, so we got 3 minus 2 times 3. And that gives us 3 minus +6, or -3 for the answer for F. G. Now we've got a fraction. So 18 minus 2 squared over 7. So we'll start up on top. We've got subtraction and an exponent, so we'll do the exponent first. And that is 18 minus 4 over 7. Finishing off the top, that gives us 14 over 7, or 2 for that one. H. So we're going to start in the denominator. Inside the grouping symbol, 2 minus 12. And that's -10. Now we'll finish off the bottom. Gives us 4. Dividing out, now that we're down to a single number on top, single number on bottom, we can divide to get -3. I. So we'll start with the exponent on top. -2 to the third power is -8. Now we'll finish off the top. 17 plus -8 is +9. Now we're down to a single number on top, single number on the bottom, divided out to get -3. And last one, J. Let's see if I can fit it here. So lots of negatives in this one to keep track of, so we need to be very careful. So I'm going to start on top. We've got multiplication, addition, multiplication. So we'll do the multiplication on the left first. So it's -8 times 2 is -16. Plus, and since it's separated by addition, we can actually do this one at the same time because they don't affect each other. It's a little trick you can do, a little shortcut there. So here we got 2 times -1 is -2, minus 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. Negative 16 plus 24, it gives us 8 on top. Negative 2, we're subtracting a negative, so that turns into addition, so it's negative 2 plus 6. So that gives us 8 over 4. Now we're down to a single number on top, single number on the bottom, and that turns into a 2. And that wraps up section 1.4. Hope you all have a great day.